the untold truth about men who walk alone. They call him lonely. They think he's missing something. Society has trained people to believe that a man without a girlfriend, a partner, or a constant stream of social validation must be broken, adrift in isolation, secretly miserable, incomplete. But what if they're wrong? What if solitude isn't a weakness but a weapon? What if the man who walks alone isn't lost, but free? Not abandoned, but untouchable? Look through history, and you'll see a pattern. Great minds, fearless warriors, and unshakable leaders spent long stretches of their lives in solitude. Not because they had no choice, but because they understood something most people never will. In silence, the mind sharpens. In isolation, discipline is forged, and in solitude, a man either breaks or becomes unstoppable. The ancient Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, didn't chase validation, approval, or distractions. They mastered themselves. They understood that true power isn't found in status, wealth, or relationships. It's in the ability to control your thoughts, emotions, and actions. When you no longer depend on anyone else to feel whole, you become untouchable. But this isn't about rejecting relationships. It's about understanding that if you can't stand strong on your own, no relationship will ever complete you. The man who thrives in solitude isn't empty. He's dangerous, because he's the one who doesn't need anything from anyone. So if you've ever felt like an outsider for choosing your own path, if you've ever wondered whether walking alone means missing out, or if you simply want to understand the hidden power behind solitude, stay with me. Because what you're about to hear will challenge everything you thought you knew, and it might just change the way you see yourself forever. Fact 1. The man who stands alone masters himself. Most people can't survive without a crutch, someone to share the weight of life, to lean on when things get hard, to fill the silence so they never have to sit alone with their own thoughts. They rely on relationships for stability, on others for reassurance, on distractions to escape themselves. But the man who walks alone, he has no such luxury. There's no one reminding him to stay on track. No one covering for his mistakes. No one softening the weight of responsibility. If he doesn't cook, he doesn't eat. If he doesn't clean, his world descends into chaos. If he doesn't pay his bills, no one is coming to save him. In the beginning, this realization is brutal. It crushes weaker men. But those who endure, they transform. Isolation forces him to sharpen his instincts, to master his emotions, to take full control of every aspect of his life. He becomes self-reliant in a way most people will never experience. While others panic at the thought of being alone, he finds power in it. He moves differently, calm, unshaken, independent. This is the essence of true strength. The modern world drowns in distractions, conditioning people to fear solitude, to mistake stillness for emptiness. But the man who embraces it, he discovers something most never will: peace in his own company. Seneca once said, "He who is content with the least is the richest." Because real power isn't found in wealth, status, or relationships. It's found in the man who needs nothing, because he already possesses everything within himself. And when a man reaches that level of self-sufficiency, he becomes untouchable. Fact number 2. The man who walks alone becomes unstoppable. Most people don't fear being alone. They fear facing themselves. They drown in distractions, chase superficial relationships, and cling to the noise of the world just to avoid the silence. Because in silence, the truth becomes unbearable. The truth that they don't know who they are without someone else to define them. But a man who truly understands himself, he doesn't run from solitude. He doesn't fill the empty spaces with meaningless chatter or mindless entertainment. He walks straight into the silence, and he owns it. The modern world conditions people to believe that solitude is suffering, that a man alone is a man lost. But the greatest warriors, thinkers, and rulers in history knew the opposite. Solitude isn't an affliction, it's an awakening. A man alone is a man free. Free to think, free to reflect, free to sharpen himself into something most will never become. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." And yet, how many today would dare to sit in that retreat? How many would willingly strip away the distractions, the constant validation, the endless pursuit of external approval, just to see what's left? Few. Because solitude is a mirror. It shows you every flaw, every fear, every weakness. Most men can't bear that reflection, but the rare ones, they use it. They refine themselves. They cut away what is unnecessary and rebuild themselves from the inside out. That's the difference. Most men seek relationships not out of love, but out of fear. Fear of their own thoughts, fear of their own insignificance, fear of realizing they are nothing without someone else to fill the void. But the man who embraces solitude, he becomes something. He no longer seeks completion in another person, because he was never incomplete to begin with. Solitude isn't loneliness. It's a crucible, a fire that either consumes you or forges you into something unbreakable. And when a man walks through that fire and emerges whole, he becomes the kind of man no one can shake, no one can control, no one can break. He becomes dangerous. Fact number 3, he becomes the master of his own mind. Most men are prisoners of their emotions. They explode in anger, drown in jealousy, chase validation like starving dogs. One argument can ruin their peace. One rejection can shatter their confidence. They live at the mercy of how others treat them, reacting, overthinking, spiraling. But the man who walks alone, he refuses to be controlled. Not because he doesn't feel, but because he has learned to command his emotions instead of being enslaved by them. Living without a girlfriend means there's no one to reassure him, no one to soften his lows, no one to absorb his frustration when life gets hard. At first, this can feel like a curse. The silence is deafening. The weight of every problem is his alone to carry. There's no emotional safety net. And that's exactly why he grows stronger than most men ever will. The world is full of distractions, alcohol, social media, fleeting relationships, anything to escape the discomfort of self-reflection. But the man who embraces solitude, he faces his emotions head-on, he dissects them, he controls them. He turns his mind into a fortress, untouchable by fleeting impulses. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That is the difference between a man who bends under pressure and a man who stands tall while others crumble. Weak men seek validation. Strong men create it from within. Think about it. How many men fall apart in relationships because they never learned to stand alone? They become needy, desperate, anxious. They let petty arguments destroy their inner peace. They mistake emotional dependency for love. But the man who has walked through solitude, he is different. He doesn't chase, he doesn't beg, he doesn't need constant reassurance to feel whole. His peace is his own, forged in the fires of self-discipline. He trains his mind like a warrior trains his body, through meditation, journaling, pushing himself to the limit, not to suppress emotions but to master them. Because true strength isn't about feeling nothing. It's about feeling everything, and still remaining in control. And when a man reaches that level of mastery, no one can break him. Fact number 4. The man who walks alone holds the one thing no one else does: absolute freedom. Most people are slaves, they just don't realize it. They wake up to alarms they hate, rush to jobs that drain them, and stay in relationships that suffocate them, because they believe they have no choice. Their lives are dictated by debt, obligations, and the fear of disappointing others. They chase approval, spend money to impress, and sacrifice their own desires just to fit into a mold someone else designed for them. But a man who walks alone, He lives by a different law. He is free. Not the fake freedom the world sells, the kind wrapped in luxury cars, mortgage payments, and fleeting validation. Number. He holds something far rarer, the power to live life entirely on his own terms. The Stoics understood this well. Epictetus once said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." A man who needs nothing is the hardest man to control. That's why he stands apart. While others drown in financial burdens, he moves with precision. He doesn't answer to anyone. He doesn't waste money on expensive gifts to keep a partner happy or drain his energy maintaining an image. Every dollar he earns is his to invest, every decision his to make. He is not trapped by obligations that weaken him. But the real power? It's not in the money. It's in mental freedom, the ability to walk any path without asking for permission. He can switch careers, change cities, take risks most men wouldn't dare to. He doesn't bend under the weight of expectations. He doesn't make choices based on what will keep others happy. He is not shackled to a script society wrote for him. How many men can say that? Most live inside invisible cages, always looking over their shoulder, always tied down by expectations, always negotiating their own desires just to keep the peace. But the man who has embraced solitude, he is untethered. He is the sole architect of his life. He doesn't avoid responsibility. He owns it. He understands that the fewer external pressures he allows, the more control he has over his energy, his future, his destiny. And when a man fully realizes that, he becomes something almost no one else can be, truly free. Fact number 5. The man who walks alone discovers his true purpose. Most men spend their lives lost, not because they lack intelligence, not because they lack opportunity, but because they never stop long enough to ask themselves a simple, brutal question: why am I here? Instead, they distract themselves. They chase status, relationships, and money, thinking these things will bring meaning. They fill their time with entertainment, pointless conversations, and shallow pleasures. But beneath it all, there's an emptiness, a gnawing feeling that something is missing. And they're right. A man who embraces solitude doesn't run from that feeling. He doesn't drown it in noise. He faces it. He strips away the distractions, the external validation, and the expectations of others. And what he's left with? A raw confrontation with himself. Most people avoid this because it's uncomfortable. When distractions disappear, the truth becomes unavoidable. Most men have no idea who they are or why they exist. They've been too busy trying to fit in, too consumed with keeping up, too afraid to be alone with their own thoughts. But the man who walks alone, he finds his purpose in that silence. The Stoics understood this. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." In other words, decide what kind of man you want to become, then go out and build him. And that's exactly what separates him from the rest. While most waste their energy on drama, on validation, on things that don't matter, he focuses. He trains his mind like a weapon. He strengthens his body. He hones his skills. He dedicates himself to something greater than fleeting pleasure. The greatest men in history, philosophers, warriors, inventors, leaders, understood this. They didn't waste their lives begging for attention. They didn't chase empty relationships. They obsessed over their purpose. And that's why they became legends. Because a man without a purpose is weak, distracted, lost. But a man with purpose? He is untouchable. He is unstoppable. And the man who walks alone? He has the greatest advantage of all, the silence to discover his purpose and the discipline to pursue it relentlessly. Fact number 6. The man who stands alone forms unshakable bonds. Here's the irony of solitude. The more at peace you are alone, the stronger your connections with others become. Most people assume that a man without a girlfriend, a man who embraces solitude, must be isolated. That he's disconnected, incapable of forming deep relationships, or simply unwilling to. But the truth? It's the exact opposite. A man who has mastered solitude doesn't fill his life with shallow connections just to escape silence. He doesn't force friendships out of loneliness. He doesn't chase attention, approval, or meaningless companionship. He chooses his circle with precision, and that makes all the difference. In today's world, most people are addicted to socializing, not because they crave depth, but because they fear being alone. They jump from one relationship to the next, filling every empty moment with small talk, cheap validation, and endless distractions. Not him. A man who thrives in solitude doesn't need constant companionship. He doesn't force himself into social situations for the sake of it. He doesn't tolerate people who drain his energy. Instead, he is selective, ruthlessly so. Seneca, the great Stoic philosopher, once said, "Associate with those who will improve you." In other words, don't waste your time on those who add nothing to your life. And this is exactly how a solitary man approaches relationships. Because he is comfortable on his own, he isn't needy, desperate, or willing to settle. He chooses people based on depth, values, and mutual growth, not obligation. This applies to friendships, mentors, and even romantic relationships. If he meets someone who elevates his life, someone whose presence makes him better, he welcomes them in. But if not, he walks away without hesitation. And that kind of mindset, it makes him incredibly attractive. People can feel it, the lack of desperation, the quiet confidence of a man who doesn't need them. And in a world where most people are terrified of being alone, that kind of self-sufficiency stands out like fire in the dark. That's why he commands respect. That's why his relationships are deeper, stronger, and more meaningful. Because they aren't built on need. They're built on choice. And that kind of connection? It's the rarest, most powerful kind there is. Fact number 7. The man who walks alone becomes unbreakable. Most men are ruled by the world around them. A little adversity? They crumble. A bad day? They spiral. A breakup? Their entire identity shatters. They let circumstances control them, opinions define them, and emotions dictate their every move. But the man who has mastered solitude? He is different. He doesn't panic. He doesn't break. He doesn't beg for acceptance. He moves through life with an unshakable presence, calm, disciplined, in full control of himself. While others react, he remains still. While others seek validation, he stands firm. This is true Stoicism, and it is forged in solitude. The world today is a battlefield of distractions. Constant noise, emotional chaos, pressure to conform. Most men are pulled in 100 directions, desperately trying to fit in, to be liked, to keep up. They live their lives reacting, chasing approval, fearing rejection, drowning in self-doubt. But a man who walks alone, he stops reacting. He sharpens his mind in silence. He builds emotional control through discipline. He learns to rely on no one but himself. And in that process, he becomes untouchable. Seneca once wrote, "A wise man is content with his lot, whatever it may be." That is true power, to stand tall, no matter what life throws at you. A man who thrives alone doesn't fear losing people. He doesn't need external success to feel whole. He doesn't collapse when things don't go his way, because his strength is internal. And that makes him unstoppable. Breakups don't break him. Failures don't define him. Hardships don't shake him. He is not controlled by opinions. He is not swayed by emotions. He is not bound by anything outside himself, because he has conquered the hardest thing of all, his own mind. And that makes him a force the world cannot control. So what does all of this mean? The man who walks alone, the man who doesn't chase approval, doesn't depend on a relationship for happiness, doesn't fear solitude, is not weak. He is powerful. He is self-sufficient. He is unshakable. While others are lost in distractions, he is focused. While others chase validation, he stands firm. While others fear being alone, he thrives in it. And most importantly, he is free. Does this mean relationships are bad? Number It means that no man should ever need one to feel whole. Because the truth is, the most attractive, most successful, most powerful men are not the ones who need others. They are the ones who choose. The ancient Stoics taught that freedom begins with self-mastery. That true power isn't found in external things, but in the ability to control your own mind, emotions, and actions. So if you've ever questioned whether solitude makes you weaker, understand this: the man who learns to thrive alone, that man is untouchable.